Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Arsenal champions for the first time in 22 years. They didn't bottle it, they won it with a game to spare. Joyous scenes on the Holloway Road. And if Ian Wright is happy, then perhaps we can all be happy. All of Mikel Arteta's tactics, his training ground bonfires, his technical area jousting in his tight trousers justified then. It worked. And now they have a Champions League final to think about. Manchester City couldn't keep it going until the end of the season. And now it's widely predicted Pep will leave at the end of the season. 17 major trophies, 115 charges, 375 so-so goods. The Premier League will miss him. So then who could keep the last day of the Premier League exciting? Spurs, of course, losing 2-1 to Chelsea because they always lose to Chelsea. They now need a point at home to Everton. Oh, man. And then Southampton, thrown out of the playoffs after admitting they spied on 3 clubs during the Championship season. Surely they didn't need to spy on Oxford. Saints players might sue their own club for potential lost earnings. What a mess. Then there's the Scotland World Cup squad. Neymar getting in for Brazil. An impressive spot in the wild of someone absolutely integral to the success of Football Weekly. With so little to discuss, it's podcasts like these where we really earn our corn. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
Hi, Max.
Hello, Sam Dalling.
Hello, Max Rushden.
Representing Arsenal, of course, Nicky Bandini. Hello, Nicky.
Hi, Max.
And also representing Arsenal from the Tuesday Club, producer Tayo Papula. Hello, Tayo.
Good morning, Max.
Yeah, that's a happy good morning, isn't it? Okay, then Arsenal champions, first time in 22 years. They beat Burnley 1-0 on Monday night. And then last night, Manchester City could only draw at Bournemouth, their 14th league title. Arteta, the second youngest manager to win the Premier League after Jose in 05. Arsenal so far have 32 clean sheets in all competitions, leading Europe's Big 5 leagues. They won 8 games in the Premier League 1-0. Just shy of their club record of 9. Gyökeres, their top scorer, with 14. Saka and Eze with 7 after that. And Arteta will become the longest serving manager in England's top 4 divisions when Pep's departure from City after 10 years is confirmed. Our mate Amy Lawrence, formerly of this parish, says... tweeted last night, I can still hear fireworks, tooting horns, singing in my neighbourhood. London N5 was a mad old carnival tonight. Islington came out in all its multicultural splendour. People ran out of their houses and this community celebrated with absolute abandon. The look on people's faces was so beautiful. Tayo, you were out there in the throng. How was it?
It's felt incredible. And Amy lives right by the ground. And so the area that she's talking about was full of just people hugging, cheering. The way that the area filled up, I watched it on the Holloway Road, and the atmosphere before kickoff was as fraught as if Arsenal were playing themselves, really. And people were out on the streets, half with celebration in mind, but also with this fear that has gripped all Arsenal fans, I think, for the last 4 years, which is why this season has felt like it's 4 years long. So the spilling out onto the streets did feel spontaneous, organic, electric, and full of relief, basically. I mean, the dancing in the pub, the Free From Desire, which wasn't the first, which wouldn't have been my anthem, and it's certainly very, very different from the last time we won the league. But it's that feeling that I think that explosion is what everyone's been kind of waiting for. And everyone went spontaneously to the roundabout outside the ground. And we thought we were early because we were quite near the ground. All the steps as you look from the stadium were full already. The police were kind of already cordoning off streets. But the atmosphere around the area just sort of spread out, basically, with the club being, with the stadium being the kind of centre of it, but the ripples of it. By the time I left, it did feel like carnival, really.
I'm gutted that I wasn't up there with Tayo enjoying it in London. It's been a strange thing. I mean, obviously, I've talked about it on the podcast plenty before, but I have been technically Slammer season ticket holder since I was a teenager. But these days I don't live in London, so I'm not there nearly as often. I think probably like quite a few Arsenal fans, even though logically I thought there's a good chance we could win it tonight because Bournemouth are a good team and this is definitely the one. I actually sort of didn't let myself believe it could happen. And so knowing I was doing this podcast, knowing I probably needed to keep an eye on the Tottenham game as well to talk about on this podcast, I didn't go anywhere. I watched it at home. And when it happened, it was like, oh shit, this actually happened. I called my brother because my brother's the one who I always went to Arsenal with. So I called my brother and had a voice call with him and enjoyed that moment. So I didn't get the moment that Tayo did. And I'm so happy for Tayo and everyone who got to enjoy that up in North London because that sounds absolutely bloody magic.
Yeah, I just wonder if either of you, because Bournemouth scored and then, which must have been a great moment like that, for you guys, like, and what a goal it was, a beautiful move. And then I guess there was only a second tire, right? David Brooks has missed those two chances. Haaland scores. And then I think Savinho is coming down the left. And it's like, is this the moment? I don't know if that felt like hours or it was just so quick that you thought, okay, we're fine. Because it was right at the end. And I think it was a Foden miss kick or something.
I think Junior Kroupier's goal, which you're right, was a massive release. And I think there's a beauty in the fact that it was the same kind of finish as has been torturing me for the last few weeks. Jeremy Doku's equaliser against Everton has been living rent-free in my head, trying to work out whether that is going to matter or not. And that fear, as I talk about with that Doku goal, is kind of the fear even last night when those chances happened. City have done this before. City, the word is inevitable, and you never know, and we haven't done it for 22 years. So that fear was exactly there all the way through. And when you miss chances, we weren't playing, obviously. We have had this in our head. If we win it, we need to win our own games. We need to win our own games. You can say it as a mantra, kind of, that's the facade, but inside you're crumbling in the sense that I wish for once somebody could do us a favour. If it was going to be anyone in this running, it was going to be Bournemouth. We've had this game, everyone's had this game kind of circled. But I've just lived in fear of City always doing it. And then when Haaland scores that close to the end, there's enough mental gymnastics going on to not be able to celebrate or even feel anything less than paralysed until the final whistle. That's how it was for me.
No, it wasn't even just mental gymnastics. I think there was an extra element of it that I almost didn't become aware of for most of the game. Again, things you know logically, but you don't feel. Because Bournemouth played really well. I have to say that. Bournemouth played a really good game. I thought they deserved, if you just take it as an abstract game, I thought they deserved the 3 points in the end, and they threw it away. But you realise in that last minute, in that last moment, including on the Haaland goal, when the defending just goes a bit and you've got not just mental gymnastics, but players attempting overhead kicks in the air, and you're thinking, what are you doing? That Bournemouth are playing for their spot in Europe as well. And Bournemouth, who've had an incredible season, who have this incredible moment of qualifying for Europe, I think could yet get into the Champions League, although it's now all reliant on Villa, isn't it? The feeling that, like, you're not allowed to panic. We've all panicked. We're all panicking. You're not allowed to panic. You're not the ones who are at the centre of the story, which of course they are. They're at the centre of their own story, but you're just locked up in your own moment then as a fan, aren't you? And thinking about it as an Arsenal fan, and you're just begging them to keep it together. And when I think about the cinematic moments of a season, because as a journalist, you pull things out, don't you? And I think everyone who's an Arsenal fan is going to go back to Declan Rice after the loss to Man City going, it's not over, and that moment. Whereas actually, I think that the flip of that is maybe when you cut to Haaland after he scores that goal, he's kind of saying, I don't think he actually says it's over, but his body language and his face is, it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah. Barry, you have, as for years, said Arsenal fans will be insufferable if they win the title. How are they being so far?
I knew you'd make me the rowdy Roddy Piper of the piece and try and get me to piss on the parade. And I'm not really going to do that because we've mentioned Amy Lawrence, Nicky's here, Teo's here, Jordan, I think, is a voice note. Good people and Arsenal supporting people, Philippe. I know how much this is going to mean to him, and Andrew Mangan of Ars Blog, Perry Groves, I know a bit, friend of the pod, Brendan Hunt, and other friends of mine who I spend a lot of time with are all Arsenal fans. Those particular ones I spend a lot of time with will be insufferable. But I've kicked them out of the WhatsApp group for a few days. So as soon as that final whistle went in Bournemouth, they were gone. But I'm pleased for the rest of them because they're good people, and I, as I say, I know how much this means to them. And it was hard not to be moved by the scenes outside the Emirates last night. It was harking back to fever pitch, which listeners of a certain age will remember. But so look, we all knew Arsenal had a good enough team to win this title, and the question was over their mentality. It would have been demonstrably hilarious if they had bottled it, but they haven't. So you have to give them their flowers for that. And their style of play is criticised a lot. I don't like watching them play, but it's worked for them. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans probably don't like watching them play because their teams gives them nervous breakdowns on a weekly basis. So I don't think it's unfair to say or unreasonable to say that I find them boring, but they've won the title, and congratulations to them.
Barry and I recently had a sit down with Gigi Buffon, which was a lot of fun. But I was actually thinking last night about a previous interview I did with him where he was talking about winning the World Cup, and he was saying how actually, like, after the Italy won the World Cup, he felt a little bit hollow. He was like, actually, what I loved was the moments when I was on the pitch and my heart was beating out of my chest and I could feel that everything was coming. And it came back to me for some reason watching the Burnley game on Monday. The exact opposite. I could not wait for it to be done. I hated every single second of it. And thank goodness it's over.
Yeah, can I just say that, strangely, Barry's might set me off again, because that was sort of quite strangely emotional hearing about some of those people that Barry mentioned who are my friends as well. And despite the slightly horrendous kind of banter era that we live amongst, it is about people, and the people that I was with to watch the match with, the people who I sit with, people who I podcast with. When we got to the ground, they were just bumping into, first of all, random people that I knew, people who listened to us, who came up to join in as well and feel part of that community. And of course, the complete random strangers, very much like Fever Pitch, who do come running up to you because you are sharing this moment of joy. It did feel really being about people, and I am very, very lucky to live right here in London and having been at the centre of it yesterday. But all those people who are part of this kind of community online, they are real people, and outside of the trolling and that fear of not only winning it, but fear of being the Arsenal friend in your group who is going to have to suffer a summer of all of that, was really, and believe me, that fear has just been writ so large for so long.
Theo has not left the group.
For work reasons, the one group that I couldn't leave, which has would have made me feel pretty awful on Monday morning if we hadn't made it. That kind of fear is there, but as I say, it's just been about being surrounded by people in real life, real hugging, real jumping up and down. And that is not to say that the insufferable part isn't to follow, because I think I would say we've earned that. Well, I was wondering about that. I mean, it's not the point, because of course the point is the good stuff, but it is a lovely side dish, and it will be served as however cold it is coming. And we do have the chance to shout champions in the ground next season, champions to our friends all summer, and champions on pods like this. And to all the kind of haters, as I say, buckle up.
Yeah, I mean, and at Palace away, which will be the deadest rubber in the history of football, as you both have European finals next week. Sam, sorry, you've been quiet for a long time. A question from Jim that says, Arteta's been mocked for some of the mad shit he's done, pickpockets, pens, fire pits, etc. But now he's won something. Will he get an easier time for these quirks? Successful managers in the 70s and 80s got up to all kinds of nonsense and were merely labelled as characters.
Yeah, it's been strange, and it's been lovely to listen to all this, by the way. I was quite happy just sitting there, because I can't relate directly to that feeling, but I think as a football fan, it's those moments that you want. It's like the only context in the world where you can enjoy a proper hug with a randomer, not say anything and it just be completely acceptable, and you know exactly why it's happening. Arteta, I've joined in the mocking of him as well. It's because it's an easy thing to do, and I think in the way the world is set up, even though we all don't want to be that person, it is very difficult not just to get drawn in with those kind of cynical, off-the-cuff comments. If someone puts themselves out there, right, and particularly when you're operating at this elite level and your every movement is now basically on social media, it's recorded. It's a bit weird when you go to games and you have the privilege of sort of media access. You see that in order to get all this footage, the entire every moment. Someone like Mikel Arteta today, he's got people with cameras in his face. Like, he's meant to just carry on as if that's normal, and it's not normal. The scrutiny is huge, and I'm not really answering the question there. But I mean, in the 70s and 80s, they didn't have that level, right? And yes, they were characters, and maybe the game has become so. What's the word for it? But like devoid of characters. Like, we stripped a lot of that away. It's all been about efficiency and the media training, and people aren't characters anymore, so we're so used to not having that when someone comes along and does things that are a little bit different and takes a risk and tries something is a little bit eccentric, then that's very easy for us to mock. So I hope that does stop. I don't think it will. I suspect people will probably double down, right, in the same way that Arsenal fans will have their little bit of insufferability. People will double down, but I mean, it's been a long-term project, hasn't it? And it is actually really nice to see. Like, I have a soft spot for Arsenal and the transformation in that. So I lived up by the ground for about 8 years, and up by the Highbury Barn, and it's a place where on a match you wouldn't necessarily know there's a match on there, partly because it's between two tube stops, so no one goes there. But in the sort of end of Wenger Emery years, I actually went to about 20 games a season without really trying for 4 or 5 years, because tickets were so freely available. Like, back when Twitter was a place for good, there was a couple of times
turning up.
There was a couple of times where I was so, it'd be half an hour before the game and someone would be giving away a free ticket on Twitter because they didn't want to go, and I could just pick up a really good seat, and the atmosphere, like, it just wasn't existent, and I've almost felt a bit like, I wish it had been. I mean, these days you couldn't get a ticket, but a couple of times I've worked there, to see the transformation in that place, I think it's easy for a fan of a club to say the atmosphere is brilliant, but actually when you're a bit more neutral about it, like, it used to be funny going there, right? I'd go because either Arsenal would be pretty good, because once in a while they were in that time, or they'd lose to someone who they didn't think they were going to lose to, and then it was hilarious watching the season ticket holders' reactions. So yeah, that I'm going to sign off that long ramble with saying actually I am quite pleased for us. So it's nice. I wish I was still. I don't wish I was in London very often anymore, but I do wish I was around last night to see those scenes.
It's interesting what Sam says about a long-term project. Like 6.5 years it's taken Arteta, and that is, the amount of managers that just get sacked without this. This kind of makes that worth it, right? And okay, there's never been a season where Arsenal have fallen off the rails, right? So there's no reason to sack him, but there's always talk. If it's not this year, he's got to go. And now he's got this platform. You sort of think he could be there for a long, long time.
Yeah, he could. I think he's helped by the fact that I don't think the Arsenal owners care whether they win anything or not, as long as they qualify for the Champions League every season. Obviously, winning something is good, but it's not the be-all and end-all for the club owners. If Arsenal had come up short this season, would he have got sacked? Probably not. And I think he'd probably have gone on to win it eventually. Like, he's 6 years. I think he should have won it sooner, personally. But and he has spent a lot of money to win the title. But I think he deserves, and I'm not an Arteta, I find him a deeply annoying man. And the thing is, he's probably all right in real life. He's probably an interesting fella to sit down for a couple of pints with, or a couple of glasses of wine. I'm very impressed with the way he galvanised the team and the fans after that wobble against, and it was a big wobble against Man City and Bournemouth. So that I'd take my hat off to him for that.
There's a romantic element to the fact that the journey sort of began and ended at Bournemouth, if you will. Like, Arteta's first game was against Bournemouth, ended 1-1 as well, actually. And it took me back to the era. One of the people I bumped into yesterday was a friend of mine who'd made me watch All or Nothing, which I refused to watch. And the time that Sam's kind of talking about, I was just like, I didn't want anything. I wanted to have as little to do with the inner workings of the club, apart from, you know, going every week. And I think that program, I was thinking about that last night, that program made people who weren't sure about Arteta but supported Arsenal like him, but people who weren't sure about Arteta and didn't support Arsenal, it kind of calcified their sort of opinions about him. And he is an odd, eccentric, intense fellow, and we've got enough skeptics in our own fan group about Mikel Arteta. But with all the weird stuff that you mentioned before, to Sam's point, I think if you're dealing with absolute elite sportsmen, then maybe you have to pull out a random way of doing things to engage them in an era of short attention spans but still elite talent. And he has managed to do that, and we have improved every season. I also think that we should have won the league sooner, but there has been a juggernaut in front of us who have many ways, as well as many good players, to stay ahead of us. And that's been a massive issue, and that's been something that he has fought. And I know there isn't time for that in the banter era, but that really does need to be taken into account, that we were playing a really, really good team with an elite manager and elite opportunities available to them as well.
Sam touching it with the atmosphere at Arsenal and talking about the fact that it wasn't a happy place to be, because it wasn't. It was a really unhappy stadium to be at a lot of the time. But just on the pitch, I mean, I think they were 11th when he took over. They'd finished 8th the season before, and I think they were 11th the day he took over. They were 8th again. It wasn't a quick fix. And I think that actually temper this, because I don't think it's necessarily like the bit that I'm the most keen to focus on or that want to make the centre of the story, but slightly disagree with Baz about the ownership not caring. I actually think since Josh Kroenke's taken over, kind of has put his hand in the situation and worked with everyone and tried to get a team that really does win and isn't just ticking over, which was the impression when Stan Kroenke first was involved in the club. A lot of Arsenal fans did look at this and go, this American doesn't care. He's just here, thinks it's a money-making enterprise. And actually, I think that has shifted in the club leadership. I think there has been a real a movement towards winning and a long-term plan for winning. And I think patience with Arteta, bearing in mind that first COVID hit season was a mess, and they had some real things to unpick there as well. I mean, it's easy to forget now that there was a lot of wages stuck on players who weren't contributing. There were situations in terms of personalities that weren't working, even players who for a while we really appreciated, like Aubameyang. It was a very unhappy dressing room, and Arteta made, in those periods when it was at its worst, he made some quite brave decisions actually around Arteta and Ozil and all those players, and knowing when he could go, do you know what, I need to say, even if it costs us wins right now, we're going to put these people aside and focus on the long term. And yes, they have spent heaps of money. I know everyone brings up the billion figure, and it's absurd. It's all absurd money, because modern football at the top level is absurd. But when you compare the combined net spend and wages to Man City, United, I think even Chelsea, is still not actually at the top of that pile. So I'm not saying anyone needs to cry poor. They're not crying poor. They've spent extraordinary amounts of money. But the idea that they've just bought it also isn't true. They've competed in a setting where they're up against huge financial powerhouses, and they've won.
Can we please stop talking about Arsenal now? I'm beginning to feel slightly nauseous.
Well, I was going to move it on, because Tayo mentioned odd eccentric fellows, which does bring us to Pep Guardiola, Sam. Many have reported, nothing official from City yet, that he's on his way. 17 major trophies, 20 if you include Community Shields. But, him and Arteta do, but no one else does. 6 Premier Leagues, including 100-point season, 3 FA Cups, 5 League Cups, a Champions League, a Super Cup, a FIFA Club World Cup in 2023. I don't remember that. Does anybody? 115 unresolved charges. With Maresca set to take over. I mean, there's a lot to unpick with Man City, isn't it? And they were close this season to having a treble. I mean, it's not a terrible season, even if it feels like it today.
It's definitely not a terrible season. I mean, he's still not confirming it, isn't he? I think John Broom was down there last night, and the post-match comments are Guardiola is still saying, well, I need to speak to the chairman first, basically, and you'll know when there's any news. I quite liked the the almost timing of it, I could almost see like just trying to steal a little bit of limelight. I almost imagine sort of Pep and Maresca like in Wagamamas on Monday night going, oh, you know, Arsenal are winning. They're gonna be writing all about them. Oh, there's nothing we can do about it. Oh, well, we could. Someone could text Ornstein and tell him that I might be leaving, and that might blow it all up. I feel for all the sort of chief football writers this weekend because everyone is going to be writing about Pep, and what more can you really say? Like, everything has been said and nothing needs saying. Similar to Arteta, right? I think to get to that elite level, to be one of the best in the world at whatever you do, and whatever the definition of normal is in a person, it doesn't really exist. But I just don't think you can get there to that level because of what it takes, like by just being, in inverted commas, normal. I mean, he is a super.
That's an issue for me, Sam, because I'm quite normal, and that means I can't get to the top of broadcasting, doesn't it? Just because
it's been holding you back all these years. But you just need to find just set fire to a few things in the background. And,
no, fair enough. Yeah, good idea.
You'd be absolutely fine. But he's a superhuman football manager, and would I want to be his mate? I don't know. I don't know if I could cope with that intensity. He's one of those people that maybe everyone has in their group that they like having around, but as soon as they walk out of the room, everyone else just relaxes a little bit because you never quite know what's going to... It's like anything could have happened while he was in the room, and we can now all breathe. And if it is the end of his Manchester City tenure, which I think it is looking likely, right? I would love him to go to Barcelona just to wind Mourinho up. That would be a brilliant power move just to turn out back there. That would be excellent. The timing is... When Alex Ferguson left Manchester United, fair play to him, he'd squeezed everything out of that squad. And people have been talking about, will Pep do another year? Because actually this squad is on the up. He's been building it again, and he brought in Gay and Semenyo in January. So actually he's leaving it in a pretty good place for whoever comes next, who sounds like it's going to be Enzo Maresca, which I think is admirable as well in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, Baz, I mean, we will have time to talk about Maresca and City after the World Cup, but I did you have anything to add on Pep? Because I'm conscious we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, well, look, the 115 charges can't be overlooked, and there's every chance, there's credible evidence that his entire empire, this empire that was specifically tailored for him upon his arrival, or before his arrival, was built on a financially fraudulent foundation. Now, there's no evidence he was complicit in any financial chicanery. Does that put a big asterisk beside what he did? I don't know. I don't think it does any more so than it would put an asterisk beside the achievements of Kevin De Bruyne or Bernardo Silva, just to name two, or Rodri. So, but you have to factor in the 115 charges. But he is a brilliant coach, no doubt about that.
Look, and if you get thrown out of the playoffs for a 12-year-old hiding behind a tree, what happens if you're found guilty for 150? Well, look, and we'll get to that.
Hello, Northern Counties League.
Just a couple of before we move on. Robert says, does Baz think Christian Norgard will finally start this weekend? Yeah, his absolute one-man campaign to get Norgard to play.
I tell you, if he doesn't start on Sunday... he might as well just hand in a transfer request on the spot.
And the only other thing from both two games was the exposed muscular buttocks of Piero Hincapié in the Burnley game, and how he did extraordinarily well to protect his modesty. Like he was completely exposed and yet not exposed at all. It was quite the moment. So well done, Piero. And to end part one, Ted says, can we get some voice notes from Jordan Jarrett Bryan and Philippe Auclair? Of course you can. And they're both great. Here they are, Jordan and Philippe.
Oh, we did it. We did it. I've not long got back from the stadium. I'm supposed to do a podcast this evening, my podcast. And we just decided, what are we doing? Let's just go to the stadium and be with our people. Oh, man, it was amazing. I don't think I'm doing a Tommy Robinson when I say I think there was 150,000 people down there. It was incredible. First league in 22 years. We've been a banter club at the butt of people's jokes for so long. But for Mikel Arteta and these boys to finally get over the line And to do it without even having to play a game, we did our job. City can do theirs. Something quite sweet in a former Chelsea player scoring the winner against Burnley, and something also sweet in it being from a corner as well. Yeah, it's going to be a good summer. Up the arse!
A good morning to you. A very good morning. A very, very good morning to you, Max, and to everyone. What to say? Is it joy? I suppose it's a form of joy, but it's more a kind of relief. The pain is over. It's like walking for hours and hours, climbing up hills, and there's always a new hill to climb, and then you fall, and then you get up, and then you fall again, but you finally get there and you slip afterwards in a warm, hot bath. It's delicious, with a glass of champagne, and loads of people outside telling you don't deserve it, and that makes it even sweeter. And it's going to be absolutely lovely, up until the Champions League final, where nobody's expecting much, really, so everything could happen. Anything could happen. But yes, it's relief. And if people tell you it's not enough, if people say you're not the invincibles, you're the unwatchables, well, relief is something absolutely wonderful to feel after a season like that. We've gone through the grinder, and strangely enough, we've come out whole. Now explain that to me, I don't know. Anyway, I'm loving it. I love everybody. Bye-bye.
And that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll begin with Tottenham's defeat at Chelsea. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. Tayo has gone away. Barry was finding the Arsenal loving a little bit too much. But Troy does say St Tottering's Day could be the 22nd of August this year. Yes, oh God. Chelsea 2, Tottenham 1. Barry, this was a not great Chelsea beating a not as good Tottenham, I thought.
I'll be honest, I pretty much presumed Spurs would get the point they needed from this game. And I was a bit surprised. I was watching City Bournemouth. I was a bit surprised when I kind of forgot about this one, then checked the score, saw Chelsea were 2-0 up, and it was like, crikey. And I've since seen the highlights. It looks like Spurs didn't get going till they were 2-0 down and left it too late. And they're in real bother still. Bother entirely of their own making. I mean, that second goal they gave away last night was criminal. Randall Kolo Muani just passing the ball straight to Cole Palmer, who went on to help set up the goal for Andre Santos. It's a pretty meaningless win for Chelsea. I reckon Chelsea probably could have done without winning that game, but Spurs seem to have made it very easy for them. And, well, they need a point now at home against Everton. There's no guarantee they'll get it. And over to you, West Ham.
Yeah,
to pile on even more pressure.
Yeah, I don't want to single out Colin Muani. It's not fair, but, I don't know what he does. And, like, how PSG paid 75 million for him once. I mean, it just shows what confidence does. Sam, Tottenham have had 2 chances to save themselves. Leeds at home, now Chelsea away, and it all comes down to Everton at home. I think I'm just asking for some hope that, like, I just can see West Ham winning, and then it's a point, and Everton aren't bad, and David Moyes managed West Ham, and
I can give you hope. I actually think Tottenham will be all right. I just think I very rarely, as a Newcastle United fan, if ever, want my team to lose, but I think I was in a fairly sizable chunk of people who would have been quite happy if we'd have lost at home to West Ham on Sunday. And we're actually quite annoyed that we came out and played this like 20 minutes of brilliant football. It's like, hang on a minute. This, of all the stuff we've had to put through this season, at least we could have relegated Spurs by handing West Ham points. But I think, it was awful last night. I mean, like Barry says that. Defending for the goal, it was like a training ground exercise for Chelsea. It was a nice finish, and Fernandes has a lovely touch, but you just look at that and go, where is this team going? And really, it should be down, but I think just by virtue of there being another worse side than them, I think they'll stay up on that last day, but you could see the agony on those Tottenham fans in the away end to have that chance to just have 4 or 5 days where you don't have to think about it. And it's not like the game on Sunday would have been a celebration. It would have just been, you just want that game to be meaningless. And it means, like, what are they, probably a couple of miles apart as the crow flies, the West Ham's and Tottenham stadiums, like 120,000 people or whatever it is between them, just having an absolutely agonising day. And it is like, that is sort of what football's all about as well, right? It's the opposite. Yeah. It's the opposite to the Arsenal feeling. But I don't know, if you just sat, if you're in it, you wouldn't say it. But if you just were 10th and 11th every year, it wouldn't be much fun. So I would say you've got to take the rough with the smooth, but maybe there's not been so much smooth. But it's going to be agonising, and it's great for TV and the media, etc., because there is actually something riding on Sunday. But yeah, I think Tottenham will be all right.
I mean, they have, Nicky, a midfield who can't pass, an attack who can't hold the ball. Like, every time a midfielder plays a quite bad pass to an attacker who can't quite control it, and it never sticks, and it always comes back, and you're like, it's sort of, I know they have injuries, right? And Maddison is clearly such a different player to everything else they have, and like there is pressure on him to start. I guess he's probably not ready, but like, do they just hold it until you keep it tight and then bring him on? I don't know how they play that final game.
I mean, I do think I completely understand the anxiety, because it's a pretty huge difference between the results going away or not. Getting relegated is a big deal. But I also think it's worth reminding that Tottenham, this was their first loss in 5 games. They need 1 point, realistically, because there's no way on earth that West Ham are winning by 12 goals. So they need 1 point, or West Ham...
That would be a blow.
Or West Ham not to win. So between those two outcomes, I find it very, very likely that Tottenham are going to stay up. And I think they were unlucky last night, actually. To me, it was a penalty at the end, that Kukurea bundling of
an
Van de
interesting
Ven.
moment, isn't it? Like, it's the ref blows his whistle, and it looks like the ball is in play, and I don't know if I'm being biased. But it's a weird rule, isn't it? Because you're doing a defender a favour. If you just hold on, then it is a penalty. And there's, like, Cucurella shouldn't benefit from fouling Van de Ven as the ball's going in. It's an odd rule, I think, Nicky.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you say, the freeze frame where they tried to show that the ball wasn't in play looked very much like the ball was in play. So it felt like a penalty. And I think that Chelsea weren't great. And it's just kind of one of those things, isn't it? Chelsea always beat Tottenham at home. It's been this running record. And I think a lot of Tottenham fans, for that reason, went into this game quite pessimistic. I don't know that Chelsea were the better team, honestly. I didn't obviously have as much focus on it in the first half when the City game was still going as I did in the second half. But in the second half, it felt like, if Tottenham had a little bit more sharpness about them at the top end of the pitch, then it's certainly kind of a different outcome. And even with the players who you've just been decrying, I mean, even with Richarlison and Gallagher, they weren't far away from it. So I think that objectively, well, I can't pretend as an Arsenal fan to be completely impartial in this one either. But I do think Tottenham are going to stay up, and I think that the other reason is I'm really not sure that West Ham will win. Even leaving aside the Tottenham result, they were pretty bad against Newcastle. So
I suppose I did say, Barry, there's a chance that neither side get any points, and neither side have got any points since I said that. Or maybe Tottenham have got 1. I don't know. Still no penalties for Spurs. Same for Villa, I was looking at, which is quite interesting this season. Is it a clean sweep for you, Barry? You still think they'll be okay? Or you don't know now? Yeah.
I do, yeah. I think they could both lose on Sunday.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have much faith in West Ham beating Leeds, but you never know.
Yeah, the dilemma
it is ludicrous that Spurs are in this position. It is absolutely unfathomable that they need a result on the final day of the season to avoid relegation.
So my dilemma is this,
need
Barry.
A result.
Yeah, my dilemma is this, Barry, is that it's a 4 o'clock? Do they all kick off at 4? That's 1 a.m. Australian time. Or I could get to 7:30 in the morning without checking my phone and watch Match of the Day, do the cut, ground to ground to ground. What's the right way to play this?
I mean, if you think you can avoid the result, then just have your night's sleep and watch Match of the Day.
Producer Tayo had written a bit called West Ham Relegation Thoughts, brackets, if necessary, which I felt was jinxing it, and I'm happy. I am unhappy it was written, but please, hopefully, we can use it on Monday. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll discuss Southampton being kicked out of the playoffs. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Mark says, do the pictures on William Salt's phone have a higher value than the Mona Lisa? Stateside Saint, Southampton fan who lives in the States. Is anything interesting going on in the Championship? I guess I'll go ahead and schedule a vasectomy for Saturday now. Southampton have been thrown out of the playoffs after admitting they spied on 3 clubs during the season. Middlesbrough will take their place in the playoff final against Hull. They were charged with watching training sessions involving Oxford United, Ipswich Town and Middlesbrough before the first leg. The Independent Disciplinary Commission also handed Southampton a 4-point deduction in the Championship for next season. Southampton admitted to multiple breaches of EFL regulations related to the unauthorised filming of other clubs' training. Sources have confirmed that Southampton will lodge an appeal. Will argue that the punishment is disproportionate, and obviously the appeal has to happen pretty quickly, maybe be resolved today. And the appeal will be heard by an independent league arbitration panel with 3 new members. Southampton, meanwhile, could face a legal claim from their players for loss of earnings after the club were expelled from the playoff. Apparently, they are livid with their employers and could go to the PFA to seek advice about the financial impact of having the chance to win promotion to the Premier League snatched from their grasp. I mean, it is a mess, Sam. Do you think it is the right call?
The mess is the right word for it. I think it was inevitable. Is it the right call? I think once we heard that there were other clubs supporting the fact that Southampton had done this previously, and I know people go back to Bielsa and things, but what happened then was a rule came in and Southampton broke that rule, and it felt like this was the only possible outcome, actually. If you're given a sporting sanction, I mean, it's huge to also have 4 points deducted next season. I mean, the appeal, as I understand it, is going to happen today. So the beauty of recording this kind of thing is it probably quite quickly goes out of date. But I think we will know by tonight. I don't necessarily see a way in which this game can happen on Saturday, and like it just. No one comes out well from this. Like Hull have had to wait and see, and who are they preparing to play? Middlesbrough have everything going on with players who should be on holiday. The disappointment: do we train? What do we know? And then if say Southampton get reinstated, and as we already know, their players are absolutely fuming, presumably. And we have to be a bit careful what we say here because we don't know who within Southampton knows what, but that's a difficult dressing room to walk back into if you're the manager, having been, right, we've been chucked out, we're all livid, we're going to sue the club. Hang on a minute, we've got a playoff final to play potentially in the middle of next week. I think it was nice to see, and I know it's not the EFL, it's an independent body. If this stands, there is an actual sanction, a proper sanction, not a slap on the wrist and a little bit of cash that clubs of that size can afford, but an actual sanction for what effectively we are calling cheating, aren't we, really? Because they have done something that was against the rules, and there is the whole cultural side of it and how it's maybe more acceptable in other countries, but I don't think this sort of ignorance plea, which is people are talking about, Southampton might potentially run in that, well, we didn't really realise that it wasn't such a good thing in this country. That doesn't wash from me. I also want to say I feel for the young intern. Like I hope
massively.
Like
the
sticking pictures of him up and there's stuff like they were talking about this. You know, the coffee he bought. Like how have people got his details of his financial transactions? Like that's massive. Like data breaches and stuff like that. But I just think hopefully he is okay and has got decent people around him, because this is clearly, from what we know, not a young man who has gone, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive 5 hours and take some independent footage. So he is almost going to potentially be one of the fall guys here. And to have this kind of stress, this kind of stuff going on around you, and what look like being the consequences is not going to be easy. So hopefully he is okay in all of this.
Yeah. And what a mad thing to tell an intern to do. Like an intern, like it's just a totally insane thing to ask. Yeah, someone who's just turned up to see how do things work. Like we've all done work experience. Like no one says go and spy. And also pleading ignorance. If you have to hide behind a tree, generally you know you're not doing the right thing. Unless you're playing hide and seek. It's such. Yes, carry on, Sam.
But it's just, and it's that kind of thing. People will say, oh well, you know, he he didn't have to go a lot. He didn't have to do it. But I think people have been in that position. He's almost like the Cameron Bancroft of the Australian cricket ball tampering scandal.
I don't think Southampton should have appealed this. I think they should have just taken their licks. They're banged to rights. They're not appealing against being found guilty. They're appealing against the severity of their punishment. But it just seems such an extraordinary place for in the nicest possible way, such a bland and inoffensive club that nobody really has particularly strong feelings about to find themselves in. And the ramifications, their reputation is in tatters. It's not fair on their fans. It's not fair on their players. But they've handled this extraordinarily badly and continue to do so.
And also, Nicky, I mean, and as Sam said, we don't know how many people were involved in this. Generally, the understanding is the owners didn't know anything about it. The players didn't know anything about it. Presuming the manager knew something about it, the impact on him is pretty huge as well, isn't it? And also, like, what's difficult for the owners is he's been brilliant. So, like, he's a brilliant coach, clearly. Like actually, they didn't win any of these games. Like, what a waste of time. But, like, he's done so brilliantly. But do you sack him? Do the players hate him? Or do they all go, guys, this is a massive fuck up, but if we get back together, we can get into the Premier League?
It is really strange because I have this memory, and I was just reminding myself of the guy's name of about a bit more than a decade ago. There was a spying scandal in Italy where there was a Genoa coach, Luca De Pra, who was caught. I mean, amazingly, he was in military fatigues, hiding behind a tree. They were spying on Sampdoria's training before a derby, and it became this big story. But it was funny because at the time it was a big story. It made international news, because of course it did, because they were calling him Rambo in Gazzetta dello Sport and everything. But actually, there weren't real big repercussions out of it. Everyone said, well, that was a bit funny and stupid, and everyone moved on. And it feels like here this story has just spun in such a different direction into this totally apocalyptic thing that can bring down a football club. And I don't know, am I wrong for thinking it's a little bit out of proportion? To me it seems, again, I mean, not wanting to drag us into the Man City conversation, because that's for another day, but in the scale of things that happen in football that cross the lines, I'm not sure that I'm as offended by this as I am by other things, but maybe that's just me. And I do think that I was thinking on the flip side of that, when you talk about players wanting to sue their club. I mean, does Taylor Harwood-Bellis get to be in on that after mocking with the binocular celebration Middlesbrough? Does there's a bit of hypocrisy there as well, or am I being unfair on that as well? I don't know.
I think it's really interesting. I think I've had messages from people saying this is totally ridiculous and totally disproportionate. And actually, Bielsa just kind of owned it, didn't he? And Bielsa was fine. There's everyone loves Bielsa, so there's no fallback on Bielsa for doing something similar.
The
and also,
thing is, Max, there was no rule against it specifically when Bielsa did it. You're wondering if Eckhart, will be able to keep hold of his dressing room. He's looking at a long ban if he's found complicit, I would suspect.
Because the rules are in and they weren't there with Bielsa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is precedent
it's the same
for
crime,
coaches
right?
being banned.
Yeah. No, true. The Canada
for
women's
this
coach,
offence.
Yeah,
so
no, fair.
I would be very surprised if he's not banned, if he is found to be complicit.
Yeah. Thing is, for Southampton, if they'd lost the playoff semi-final, this would have probably gone away. I mean, that's quite interesting if they just hadn't that, cross that just sailed in. If they'd lost on penalties, or Middlesbrough scored some of the million shots they had in the first leg, probably not a story. And just a note on Borough, the club's admin staff have to face the challenge of selling 35,000 tickets to their fans in a final. The East Coast railway line is closed between Darlington and York.
Ugh. Replacement bus.
Oh, that is a big old replacement bus, isn't it? The results of the appeal are announced. Villa Freiburg tonight in the Europa League final. I don't know if anyone has any strong thoughts on this game ahead of it. We might as well just wait for it to happen and talk about it, I think. But it's a great opportunity for Unai Emery just to win another Europa League, Baz.
Yeah. There seems to be a kind of presumption. I might be wrong, but there seems to be a presumption that this game is a formality for Villa just because Freiburg aren't a big name German team. But I was having a snoop around. They're decent team. They've done well in this. Well, obviously they've done well in this year's Europa League, but they've finished seventh in the Bundesliga. They have some decent players, so I hope to give Villa a good game, but I would like to see Villa win. I think the main question for this one, the Villa team more or less picks itself, apart from the midfield spot. Onana's probably injured. Lindelof, who has been playing in midfield, might be injured. Ross Barkley isn't in their Europa League squad, so he can't play. Boubacar Kamara is injured, so who plays in central midfield for Villa alongside? Is it McGinn?
Yeah, McGinn.
Yeah.
I mentioned World Cup scores in the intro, but we might leave those for tomorrow since the Premier League preview is sort of less important. Discussing Scotland's World Cup squad, Neymar getting back in for Brazil. Nicky, Serie A is, it's nearing the end. Jamie Vardy's Cremonese need a point. Well, they need to do better than Lecce to stay up. Is that right?
Yeah, so he scored a winner for them at the weekend against Udinese, and now they get to play against Como on the final weekend. I wouldn't say that's particularly auspicious for them. Como are very much in the Champions League fight, with Cesc Fabregas, of course, leading that. Como need results to go their way. They need Roma or Milan to slip up ahead of them, but they have plenty of incentive. And yes, even if Cremonese win, if Lecce win as well, they could go down. But yeah, it's going down to the wire in the Champions League race now, because Juventus have tripped up this weekend and made the way for Roma to get ahead of them. And so you've currently got Roma and Milan joining Napoli and Inter, but both Como and Juventus could overtake them. So yeah, that's the main interest points in the final weekend.
Sam, we talked about Southend very briefly beating Wealdstone in the FA Trophy, but you wanted to talk about it. You peel back the curtain, it's not as happy at Roots Hall.
Well, they've just announced last night that the management team are basically not required for next season. But yeah, I had the privilege of being there on Sunday in one of those sort of behind the scenes pieces, so in the dressing room. But football at that level is completely different because contracts are short. It's year on year. You are talking about the ability to pay your mortgage if you don't have a new contract, and their star player is this right wing back called Gus Scott Morris, who I think he's scored like 17 goals from wing back, and he said in the build up to it, he still hadn't got a new contract offer, and the chairman or the owner was doing interviews talking about change and it being a bittersweet day. And so I think there was a lot of uncertainty rumbling into this final. But so they won it on penalties, and I was there on the sideline, and their manager, was a guy called Kevin Mayer, who played 450 odd games for the club, and him and his first team coach were the midfield pairing when they jumped from League Two to the Championship, and so Mark Bentley and Darren Curry, who's his assistant, and they went in it was just an amazing moment because they went in October 2021, I think, and they have faced like transfer embargoes. They couldn't sign players. They've had points deductions. They've had times, I think they only had, basically they had match day squads of 12. They were catching, there was no water at the training ground, so the roof was leaking, and they'd have buckets underneath like catching it to wash the kit from basically the recycled water. Or that I think Mayer once drove the kit van off site for fear of it being repossessed otherwise. So these are football conditions like no other. And I just feel there was this rumbling. They're ambitious, the owner, right? And it's perhaps based on their name and their fan base that they should be higher than they are. But actually, they've done all right. They finished sixth. Their budget's probably 7th to 12th in the league. But to have that moment at Wembley, I could just see how much it meant to them. Like Bentley immediately had Mayer in this bear hug, and there were tears, right? They were all crying and they were all running over to their family, and to have that insight into how much football means to people was a real privilege. And yeah, to see what perhaps felt inevitable, that they'd then been moved on, it just feels, I don't know, be careful what you wish for sometimes. It'd be interesting to see how that unfolds.
We finish with an email from Tom in Sydney, who says, Dear Max, Barry, the entire Football Weekly team, long-time listener, first-time correspondent. I'd never had good reason to write until now, thanks to what may be a unique Football Weekly adjacent experience. My story begins a couple of years ago when I was walking along Manly Beach in Sydney, enjoying Football Weekly in my headphones, when I glanced right and realised I'd achieved surround sound max. There he was, sitting on a bench in front of me. I had to say hello, but was conscious of interrupting and further sheepish as he was on the pod at the time, complaining about the beer invitations he was getting from strangers in Australia, and I didn't want him to think I was another bloke trying to make him a celebrity mate. I made my move anyway, and Max was extremely gracious and introduced me to the man beside him, who, to my added excitement, turned out to be David Squires. In retelling this story to a couple of mates, I should say David became the bigger draw card, so thanks to him for being there. Living in Sydney, I assumed that would be my one and only live Football Weekly encounter. Yet last week in Auckland Airport, New Zealand, halfway through a plate of mini spring rolls, I looked up stunned, as I was certain the current Mrs. Rushden, who I recognised from Max's Instagram, had just walked past me. This led to an intense internal debate. Do I say something? What do I do? Would speaking to her somehow constitute a betrayal of Max? Would I instantly become known in their family as an unwelcome recurring character? In the end, it was decided for me, as she either never returned to where I thought her seat was, or perhaps spotted staring spring roll man and took evasive action. Which brings me to my question. Can Max confirm whether I hold the unique honour of being the only Football Weekly listener to have separately encountered both him and Mrs. Rushden in the wild in different countries? And Barry, if this does make it to air, I'll shamelessly take the opportunity to request your unique best wishes to me and my fiancée Bonnie for our December wedding. We have two wonderful young daughters, Chloe and Camille, who would love to hear this one day. Thanks for many years of entertainment. Live show in Sydney soon, please. Cheers, Tom. It is true. Mrs. Rushden was on her way to New York for 9 nights. I am alone here with 2 children, one of whom getting up at 4 every morning. I'm not allowed to complain about it to Barry, because even though I say I'm solo parenting, he says I'm getting help. Where do you want the children while I'm doing this podcast? But I am absolutely broken. I am broken. I honestly am. I am a husk. I'm so dead inside. You can't believe it. But yes, Tom, Jamie says next time do say hello. It was indeed her, and it was a great email. But like just being in this shed and not having to feed them risotto right now it's absolute heaven. This is why I'm extending the pod for as long as I can, Frank. That's why the Arsenal bit went on for ages, Barry. This is easier. It was easier than going back inside is what I have to do. But yes, Barry, if you could, it's Tom, Bonnie, with their daughters Chloe and Camille, if you could do the honours.
I love when you spring these on me, Max. Really love it.
Just say, have a great day. It's not rocket science.
Well,
I could do it, and
it?
I've had about 2 hours sleep in the last 8 days.
Well, I haven't had much sleep either, because you keep dragging us out of bed to record. We all have to radically alter our routines so your children can stick to theirs. And you find that in no way unreasonable.
No, I understand. You're
as
doing
if
me a
it makes a
favour.
big difference what time your children go to bed at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Who cares? Anyway, Tom, Bonnie, and your children, I hope they're not as demanding as Max's. And I hope you have a great wedding in December. And I wish I was on Manly Beach, because I've been on it before and it's very nice.
Oh, there we are. Thank you, Barry. And that'll do for today. Thanks, everybody.